Time I had a chance to be on this side of a microphone at a WAFTA conference was 13 years ago. And that was when I turned my gavel over to Chuck Janevsky, who was the third incoming president. And since then I've been on your side of the audience listening. But the reason I'm here today is to participate in the ongoing I Remember series. And I've been asked to offer my memories of the fastener industry of the last 50 years. That's a long time. 50 years ago, a lot of things were going on, but oddly enough, I can remember what happened in 1947 more accurately than I can remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. That's one of the quirks of the memory. But I remember how difficult it was at first in the organization. In 1947, Harry Truman was the President of the United States, and the New York Yankees beat the Brooklyn Dodgers for the pennant. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is to emphasize how long ago it was that Portland Screw Company went into business for itself. Of course, I wasn't there then. I was in high school. I was a sophomore in high school, and I was busy chasing my future wife up and down the hallways. And so I wasn't a member of Portland Screw Company. I finally caught my wife in 1952, and we are celebrating our 45th wedding anniversary this year. Well, the big question I've been asked and I've been thinking about and haven't answered for myself is how and why did I get in the fastener business in the first place? Well, I'm going to say it was kind of by accident. In 1951, I was broke. I was going to business school and I couldn't pay my tuition. So the answer was I've got to get a job, at least for a while, so I can accumulate enough funds so I can pay my tuition for the next semester at least. The only thing I knew how to do in those days was either punch a typewriter or play a piano, vice versa. I don't know which you want to call it. But I went to the employment service of the college and I told them my problem, and they handed me a piece of paper and they said, clerk typist needed. Portland Screw Company, 36 Southwest 3rd Avenue. Well, in those days I didn't know what a screw company was. I had no idea. So what I had to find out, I took a trip downtown and I found the Portland Screw Company, a little hole in the wall operation, about 20 feet wide. And on the right side was a farm labor employment service. On the left side was a beer tavern. And on the sidewalk, there was these people sleeping or passed out or whatever they were doing. And a few of them were up against the wall with a bottle of Tokay wine, sharing it with their friends. And I looked down the street and here was a burlesque theater on the left. And then I was told that across the street was a house of ill repute. I was also told they were looking for a part-time piano player. But I almost turned around and went home. I said, hey, this isn't the beginning of my life or my career. But my curiosity got the best of me, so I walked in the front door, and what I found inside was even funnier. It was about a 2,000 square foot room, warehouse and offices combined, and the biggest room in the place was the bar. And on every wall and on the ceiling were pictures of nude women. And I'm standing there, I said, is this where I'm headed? So I'm standing there looking up at the ceiling, and the owner, a fellow by the name of Bill Goodrum, came out and he wanted to know what I wanted. I think he wondered whether I was somebody off the sidewalk or a customer. And in those days, it was kind of hard to tell the difference. But I said, I'm applying for this job of clerk typist. And he said, okay. He set me down at this antiquated typewriter that even in those days belonged in the Smithsonian Institute. And I typed, or I played a few notes for him, and he says, okay, that's fine. He said, 5 days a week, 8 to 5, $40 a week. I said, say what? I looked at him, and even in those days, $40 a week was sweatshop wages. So he said, well, take it or leave it. But then he put his hand on my shoulder and he says, son, he said, never let yourself be overpaid. I never forgot that. I lived through that in my entire life. But I looked around the room at that moment, and this place isn't going to make it for another 3 months anyway. So I figured for the fun of it, I'll stay, which I did. Well, obviously I stayed longer. And my big opportunity for promotion came when the bookkeeper was canned for embezzling the company funds. And the owner came to me and he says, Dave, do you know how to do books? I was smelling a raise coming, so I said, yes. And then I raced down to sign up for a correspondence course on how to be a bookkeeper. And I actually faked it for 3 months. And the only reason I did it was I knew a little bit more about bookkeeping, which was almost nothing, than the boss did. So I got by with that. And I stayed for a while, and then a series of raises, I stayed a little longer. But I always wanted to make sure I earned what I got before that. Doing business in the 50s and 60s. When I first arrived at Portland Screw Company, the inventory was 80% war surplus. I think Mr. Hayes knows what I'm talking about. The boss had, by the pound, bought a bunch of lots of surplus, wrapped in cosmoline, and just looked like a junkyard. I think back about it, and I wonder how we possibly won the First or Second World War if our military was depending on these kinds of fasteners to hold their weapons together. Yeah. That junkyard stayed for quite a while, and we had trouble getting suppliers, mainly because our credit wasn't very good, but also in those days you had mill supply houses and wholesale hardware outlets that were a little sensitive about their suppliers selling to station wagon jobbers, which I think we probably qualified in those days. And so we had trouble at first getting suppliers, but one day the door opens up and here comes this good-looking guy with a bow tie and two-tone shoes. And he said, I want to sell you your bolts and nuts. He says, my name's Bud Porteous. And he said, I am with Russell Bolt Company, but we only make up through 5/8 by 6 inch. Well, as time went on, more city slickers walked through the door. There was a fellow named John Dooley, I think his name was. John came in with National Screw Company and armed with an extra 5. And John always wore a hat. As I remember, he had a hat on most of the time. And he had a hat on even after hats were out of style. I remember that he had an Adam hat. And we always knew when John was coming because we looked down the street and the only guy in the block who had a hat on, that was John. So then there was another fellow that wanted our business. His name was Don Olander. He worked with Stan Screw. Well, Don didn't wear a hat. In fact, he very seldom wore a tie. And when he did, he had it at half-mast or slung over his shoulder. And he wanted our business too. So, and then there was another feller that came in. I think he said his company was Bethlehem, something like that, and he wanted our business, but he didn't wear a tie or a hat. And guess who got our business? RBW. Excuse me.